Real estate is not like trading stocks and bonds that happen instantaneously. These things take a while. More important to say no to things than to say yes to things. We only have a limited amount of time. I always say a broker has two main assets: market knowledge and time. You don't have to be at a big firm to compete effectively. You just need to do the right things.
Today, I am joined by two commercial real estate legends. Bob Knakal, he's sold more buildings in New York City than anyone in history. And Rod Santomassimo. He's a go-to coach for elite brokers all across the country. They've teamed up to write a powerful new book called Selling Buildings. And in this episode, we're going to dig into what high-level investors can learn from the best in the business, from maximizing price to building a legacy. And if you're managing serious capital or thinking long-term, this is a conversation on the Real Estate Syndication show you don't want to miss. Rod, Bob, welcome to the show. Honored to have just legends like you on the show.
Whitney, great to be here today.
We're going to have a blast. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. I'm really looking forward to diving in and just drawing out some of your expertise. I know you guys are just so well known in the space, and so many listeners already know who you are. And I've already mentioned in the intro about your book that's coming out, which I know we're going to highlight a number of pieces of as well. But to get us started, Bob, I know you've sold over 2,300 buildings. That's a big number, right? But what stands out, just as much, is your long-term thinking, right? And just for our audience, many of them who are thinking towards, say, intergenerational wealth. How do you think about real estate decisions in terms of, say, legacy and stewardship?
Yeah, well, I think there are a lot of folks who have a very long-term perspective, and real estate is not like trading stocks and bonds that happen instantaneously. These things take a while. And in the same way, I think the folks that have a very long-term perspective on things are the ones who do the best, because then you're making decisions based on a grounded decision-making process as opposed to spur-of-the-moment decisions. And, I've always had a very long-term perspective on the business. And now that I'm approaching the middle of my career, because I still have 30 or 40 years to go, I still am taking a very long-term perspective and know, I gotta plant seeds for the future, because I have several more decades to go selling buildings in New York.
Rod, I know you've coached, hundreds of brokers and worked closely with family office level sellers. And when thinking about, say, elite brokers and just long-term investors, and what they have in common, how do they think differently, say, from others?
We've coached thousands and thousands of brokers over our 17 years. They're commodity brokers thinking about the next deal. They're living on the transaction treadmill. That's what they're doing, right? They're chasing deals, looking for a commission. And that's just most brokers, commodity brokers. The authorities, like BK, they're thinking about building a business, right? What's the business building? So what's the marketing plan? What's the prospecting plan? What's the operations behind it? What processes do we have? So it's a completely different mindset and a different aspect and approach to how you build your practice. One is transaction-based and one is relationship-based and business-based.
How should high net worth families say vet brokers or advisors and who represent their assets, especially, when that sale, like we talked about earlier, Bob, is going to affect, say, generational capital, just for either of you?
Yeah, well, I think, making a decision about a broker to use, I go back to the first thing that Rod teaches about prospecting is you have to offer something of value. If you're calling up prospects saying, hey, do you want to sell your building? You're not going to get anywhere. You have to offer something of value. And I think that really leads to kind of an evolution of what prospecting has become for me now that in July, I'll be celebrating my 41st anniversary, starting year number 42. And at the beginning of your career, prospecting is a process that is a mile wide and an inch deep. You're just trying to get people to know you. You're trying to get your name out there. You're trying to hit as many people as possible to see where the opportunities are. And now that I've been doing this for so long, My perspective is the inverse of that. I'm trying to go an inch wide and a mile deep with everybody. So when I meet a client, I've now refined and prioritized my prospecting. So I'm only prospecting to folks that have properties that I really would like to sell. What are the most attractive properties? What are the most valuable properties? What are the best opportunities out there? What are the things that are going to get me excited about working on them? And once I've connected with that owner, I want to become their best friend. I want to meet with them. I want to get them into the Knakal map room to see the tremendous resources that we have here. I want to provide them with the best quality information. I want to go through the Knakal Land Index with them, which is a 40-year study of 2,417 development site transactions that have happened in the Manhattan market, where we've spoken to the buyer and seller of virtually every one of those transactions, have the inside information. We are looking at creating such a curated experience for the client, giving them the absolute best information available upon which to make informed decisions. And that, I think, is the best thing we can do. Look, the reality is, what we really try to do is help our clients make the best decisions they possibly can. And when you're going a mile deep with them and you're giving them access to a granular pipeline that's nailed down to the square inch for what's being built in the city, and you have detailed information on every single comparable sale, you're putting them in a position where they really can make the best possible decisions. And when you have all of that backup, and you can make very, very informed decisions, your results are going to speak for themselves, and you're going to get the best results you possibly can. If I can do that for a client, that's the best thing I can possibly do to help them.
Now, right now, we're vetting developers for our next iteration of AI. And just like a property, when you sell a property, it could be millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars difference in who you pick. And so it's the same decision process. Are they experts? Do they have the track record? Do they have the social proof? Do other people say good things about their experience with the broker, right? And Bob reaches this, are they specialists? Being an expert's great, but being a specialist, if you're going to sell you're doing a multifamily asset, right? And you're interviewing brokers who sold 3 office buildings. That's great, but that's not what you need. You need a specialist to come on in and help you, because it is one of the biggest decisions you're going to make is selling that asset. Make sure you're the right partner to maximize the price, and not only the price, but maximize the experience and make sure all the hurdles are taken care of as well. And that's what people like BK, why we hire only authorities.
I love the thought, or just the intentionality, right? I mean, you mentioned so many things, both of you, but the inch wide, a mile deep. Even this, becoming their best friend, right? Getting them into the map room, actually, which I've seen pictures of online, Bob, at different times, which seems pretty amazing. Never been there, but I love that intentionality, right? But it's even, you mentioned, hey, it's even going back to what are the buildings that I am really interested in and I'm going to get most excited about, and then you're just laser focused. Any other tips around, say, becoming their best friend or the first interactions? What that should look like for that broker.
Yeah, Whitney, I think it really comes down to doing things very intentionally. And Rod is constantly reminding me, BK, don't chase the shiny object. And it's almost more important to say no to things than to say yes to things. We only have a limited amount of time. I always say a broker has 2 main assets: market knowledge and time. And to the extent that you're in the business, you're going to continue to grow your market knowledge on a daily basis. But you really can't make time, or at least I thought you couldn't make time, but you can make time. And you can make time by using time more effectively. And what I mean by that is that I think today, product specialization is the way that you can create time. And as an example, if last week, apropos of what Rod just said, if last week I sold an apartment building, a retail property, and an office building, and I'm pitching an office building this week, that owner wants to hear about everything that happened on that office building I sold last week, but couldn't care less about the apartment building or the retail property. So 2/3 of the time I spent last week closing deals, it's not accretive towards me getting this week's assignment. Had I sold 3 office buildings last week, 100% of my time was accretive towards getting this week's assignment. That's how you can create time out of nothing. And so I think it's really important to be an expert, to spend all your time doing the things that are going to continue to compound and lead to better results in terms of what you're doing. And that's the way that you really can use time more effectively and be a truly valued resource for your client.
And Bob, I know you said there's a difference between, say, selling a building and listing one. Maybe you can explain a little bit the distinction and what it means for, say, property owners trying to maximize that value.
Sure. Well, there are always two sales to every transaction. And, my value proposition has been identical for 41 years. Has not changed. I only sell buildings. I only represent sellers. I only work on exclusives, and I only sell properties in New York. That took 6 seconds, nothing vague about it, very, very clear. So my first sale, I have to, obviously we have to sell the building. But that's sale number 2. Sale number 1 is convincing the seller that they're going to get a better result if they give me an exclusive. I've never worked on anything that I was not the exclusive agent for, nor would I ever spend the time to do that. I tell people, look, if you have a 13-story pink building on the corner and you won't hire me exclusively, and the next day a 1031 buyer comes into my office and said, I have to buy a 13-story pink building on the corner, I'm not telling that buyer about the building. I think it's a total waste of time. I'm going to spend that time going out and trying to get an exclusive from the next potential seller. I think you need to understand what it is that you're doing. Sale number 1 is getting hired exclusively. Sale number 2 is actually selling the building. Big difference, different techniques, different strategies for both of those. But two sales are a component of every transaction that we do.
Love that. And even in that train of thought there, Rod, I know, when you coach brokers, what are you mostly seeing them doing wrong? Maybe when they're pitching or marketing a property, and maybe how can investors, say, spot this as well?
Yeah, I think that's such a loaded question, Whitney. What brokers doing wrong could take us a several-day show. We could do 2,000 episodes on what brokers are doing wrong. But look, brokers focus too much on the real estate, and if you think that's their job, right? Maybe that is true, but every individual has a unique situation. At least they believe it's unique, right? Every investor, every buyer, every seller has a unique situation that's important to them. So the number one thing I think brokers make the mistake on is they go to a meeting, they go to a pitch, they make their phone calls, and they focus on the real estate, where instead they should focus on the real life. If they make that one switch, BK does it all the time, then they'll get greater relationships. You get someone that more resonate with someone you're speaking with, and you'll secure more exclusives. You'll get more tenant reps, more exclusive building sales. But stop focusing on the real estate. The real estate's easy. It is. There's real life challenges that you have to address and help someone through those challenges.
I've experienced that personally so much. It's like when you can just focus on the relationship right away. The other stuff we can talk about whenever, right, or soon. But man, it's hard to build a relationship when you miss that first opportunity. Bob, I know you shared a story about, was it Harry Macklowe? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
The cold calls to $179 million sale. I mean, that's kind of crazy. Maybe you can highlight that story a little bit for investors. What does that story reveal about, even in this train of thought? The value of relationships, right? In CRE and commercial real estate, but not just say data, alone.
Yeah, well, I think the real lesson that comes out of the Harry Macklowe relationship is that I cold called the guy for 2.5 years before he took my call. And I left messages for him repeatedly. Back in the old days, we used to have paper catalogs and we wrote everything down. And I had pages and pages of left message. Finally called him one night about 7:00. And his assistant, the gatekeeper, had left for the day. He picked up the phone. I said, Mr. Macklowe, Bob Knakal from Coldwell Banker. I want to talk to you. And yeah, I know who you are. You leave messages for me all the time. What do you want? And that was the start of a relationship that has led to a friendship. I socialize with Harry now. We've done over 20 deals together, about $400 million worth of transactions. And I think the story you were alluding to was I had done a couple of small deals with him, and he called me one day and said, "Hey, Bob, come over to my office right now. I'm going to make your year." And without blinking, I hung up the phone, went out in the street, ran up to his office, and he said, "Look, I know you've never sold a property for over $100 million before, but I've seen what you're doing. I know you know how to sell apartment buildings. You've sold a lot of them. I have 7 buildings I want to sell. It's probably worth $200 million, and you're the guy." And he knew if he gave me that, that was going to be the most important transaction for me. I had demonstrated capability, and that I could do it for other people on smaller transactions. And Harry had the faith to give me the assignment on a larger one. And we ended up selling his portfolio for $179 million. It was a great transaction, but it came from making those 2.5 years of calls and not giving up, and finally cracking the nut, reaping the rewards of having had the discipline to keep pounding the rock when it didn't look like you were getting anywhere.
Wow. Did you know that about him when you were like just constantly making those calls, or was he just on a big list, or like were you that focused, as far as
he owned a little 1-story building at 240 East 60th Street, which was on 60th Street, south side of 60th, just west of 2nd Avenue, and right behind the Roosevelt Island Tramway. And I thought it was a great little property. Clearly, I had known of him. He was doing all kinds of big deals all over town. I didn't really understand why he owned this smaller building, but I know Harry loves to do deals of any size. So he owned that building, and I wanted to sell it for him. And actually, about 10 years later, I ended up selling that building for him. But one of a number of deals we did together, and I'm very grateful for my relationship with him. It's been a great one.
Thankfully, back then he couldn't just block your number, right? Wow.
That's right.
Rod, I know that you emphasize repeatable systems, right? What's the system, say from the book, that the high net worth families should be using, or to vet manage properties, or even, if they're not using even a broker or, themselves?
Well, first and foremost, whether you're a broker or investor or family office, you have to have, you said it, Whitney, you have to have repeatable systems. What does that actually mean? It means you have documented, or in today's world, you can have AI platforms do this, processes, right? How you do whatever you do. Like BK is, we have a process for prospecting. We have prospects for once we secure a deal, what happens next, and fulfilling the deal, and processes for marketing, right? So what are the processes you have in place, right? And it could be through AI. Today, it should be through AI, frankly. It could be through an automated system like a GHL or HubSpot, or any of those other systems that automatic systems in that case. But also, besides the process, again, they need a platform. So those are the 2 things I would look at first and foremost. What's the process and what's the platform? You can combine them, and then you sit back and let the process work. And so there's never a question. So let's say that if you're a broker, you hire a new broker, and they say, well, how do I do this? You say, go check out our processes. This is how we do things. Versus answer the same question again and again and again. But those are 2 things in order, Whitney: process and platform. And everything becomes easy.
To get a little bit technical, are there specific, say, AI systems or platforms that you would recommend?
Well, there are so many AI platforms right now, but I'm telling you, there's not one single platform is the answer. But within a year, everyone listening to this podcast, within 1 year, if not 6 months, we will all have a platform of AI agents doing half of what we're doing today. That, I'm telling you straight out, that's where we're going. Based on the speed of going, within 1 year, 6 months, all of us will have a platform where our AI agents do half of what we're doing today.
I have no doubt about that either. I'm learning more and more all the time about AI. Speak to, while we're on that too, maybe training your brokerage teams or, employees on, just especially AI, as much as it's going to do for us and as fast as it's going. How are you all staying up to date, or how do you advise to do that?
Well, I think the first question is how you stay up to date. You have to. I read 3 AI newsletters every morning. First thing I read, not real estate, because this is where we're going. It's AI. And then I hired an AI team, and now we're hiring an AI development team to keep us abreast of everything that's going on. So that translates to my coaching clients, our brokers, implementing AI into what they do every day, to help them, whether it be research, prospecting, marketing. We have a platform, Whitney, that right now our clients can prospect to thousands of investors in a matter of minutes, and text bots talking to investors and answering investor questions while our clients are out getting more listings. So all those platforms exist, and they're just going to get better.
No doubt. I'm trying to push in more all the time, and learning about these agents and, like you said, different things that are just taking a number of things off my plate, but our team members as well. Shift gears a little bit, Bob. I know you share just a powerful story around about growing through the aftermath of 9/11, and what can our audience learn? Just say about investing boldly when others are retreating.
That really is. You've opened the can talking about inflection points. And I'll tell you that inflection points are really where the rubber meets the road. We all come to forks in the road when we have to decide to go left or right. Those decisions often have very profound consequences. After 9/11, we were faced with a fork in the road. Most companies in New York, and this goes back to the Massey Knakal days. Paul Massey and I started Massey Knakal in 1988. And after 9/11, we had to make a decision. We had 21 people at the time. Every company was downsizing. People were leaving New York. They thought New York was over. We had the ultimate confidence in New York. We said, New Yorkers are tough. They're going to bounce back. All these folks that are being laid off, let's go hire everybody and grow the company so that when the market rebounds, we're positioned to take advantage of that. It was a big bet. It was counterintuitive. We went out, hired a director of HR, hired up people left and right. We had 21 people on 9/11. 2 years later, we had 150 people. And when the market started to come back in 2003, other companies just started to say, well, gee, maybe we should start hiring people again. We already had people with 2 or 3 years of experience. We had opened 2 new offices, one in Brooklyn, one in Queens. We were perfectly positioned to take advantage of it. And while from 2001, when CoStar started tracking the market, to 2014, we had sold 3 times the number of properties as our closest competitor. During those years of 03, 04, 05, 06, 07, we were 4Xing the competition most of the time. From 01 to 2014, the number 2 company in New York had sold about 1,300 properties. We sold over 4,000. And a big reason for that was because of the counterintuitive steps that we made often at these inflection points. And that leads perfectly into our book, Selling Buildings. I mean, this is basically, as the Beatles would say, it's been a long and winding road. We take a look at the journey that I've had, starting Massey Knakal, just Paul Massey and I and a secretary, 3 people, to growing it to 250 people in 4 offices in New York, selling it for $100 million in 2014. And all of those other inflection points along the way. We filled up all of our sale territories in Manhattan. Do we get into other disciplines, or do we go to the outer boroughs? We fill up everything in New York. Do we go into other focuses, other service lines, or do we go to other cities? Do we hire people after 9/11? Do we not? All of these things, they all were points at which we had to make decisions. All of those decisions have consequences. And the book is a journey through each of those, the decision-making process we went through, what we decided to do, why we decided to do it. And then we're telling deal stories along the way. A lot of my social media following loves to hear the deal stories and get really behind the deal. What was the seller really thinking? What did they really say? What did the buyer think? What strategies did the buyer try to use to get an advantage? What did we do to counteract what the buyers were trying to do? And then we tell these deal stories that are very illustrative of what was going on in the market at the time. And then Rod layers on his macro perspective, having seen thousands of brokers go through these things and applying his perspective from what were the advantages to the investor? What lessons can an investor learn from these things? What are the lessons a broker can learn from these things? So it's a really cool combination. I mean, Rod has been my coach for over 12 years. He's become one of my best friends. We talk every week. And the interplay between my perspective on 40 years as a broker and his perspective on being the top coach in the country, looking at how people can derive actionable lessons from this book makes it, I think, a great resource for folks.
What about, speaking of the book, and I know we've highlighted a few pieces of it, but what's something, Bob, if you could pick one thing from that book that you want people to remember, 10 years from now that have read it, like what's going to be that thing that's going to just really hammer home and help them to succeed?
That I think you have to sometimes just go for it. William Wallace, Mel Gibson's character in Braveheart, famously said, "Every man dies, not every man really lives." And of course, that applies to both men and women. But I think it's just emblematic. You have to go for it. And if you really believe in yourself, take chances. You only live once. Go for it. Have something that you think makes sense and put it all on the line. The real estate business is so awesome. It's like, it's the purest form of meritocracy there is. You get out of it exactly what you put into it. And if you're willing, if you have the three things that really differentiate the folks who get outsized results from those that don't, and that's a true expertise, passion and love for the business, and the ability to use discipline well, you can achieve anything you want to achieve in this business. And especially if you can learn lessons, you can get up the learning curve much faster. One of the things I regret was that early in my career, Paul and I thought we could do everything ourselves. We didn't ask people for advice. And consequently, we made thousands of mistakes. I learned from those mistakes. Fortunately, we didn't make a lot of those mistakes twice, but a lot of the lessons that we learned by making all those mistakes, by having a trial and error approach to the world, are in the book, and hopefully they will enable folks to not make those same mistakes that we made. But I think the lesson is, go for it. If you have a good idea, lay it on the line, put it all out there, give it everything you have. Real estate being the way it is, that you get out of it what you put into it. There's just an unlimited amount of joy and happiness and monetary remuneration that you can get out of this business if you just lay it on the line and get some good coaching. I'll tell you, one of the best things I ever did in my career was hiring Rod as my coach. It totally changed my life. I think if you are a broker and you don't have a coach, you're leaving hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year on the table, no matter how much you're making. You make $10 million a year, good for you. If you are and you're not being coached, you probably could make $15 or $20 million a year. There's no limit to what you can achieve.
Yeah, and Whitney, if I may, I think from the book perspective, Whitney, we take a look. You said it in passing, and Bob sold 2,300 and sold buildings. The actual number is 2,349 as of today. Bob's been in the business for 41 years. In July, be 42. So if you do the math, it's obvious. It's 1.01 buildings per week right now. Think about that. So this book is about someone who is selling a building a week over his entire career. No one can claim that. Nobody can claim that. A company may be able to, not an individual. And yes, Bob had help with his companies. There's no doubt about it. He's not taking all the credit, but Bob was the lead point person for all those sales.
But I have to interject. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I owe a lot of my success to all the folks I worked with, all the great partners I had, the great brokers I worked with, and nothing is an individual effort. It's all a team effort, and I owe so many people so much. But what I will say is the overwhelming majority of those sales came when we were at a small popcorn stand in New York competing against big national and global firms, and we were eating their lunch every day. And the reason we were eating their lunch every day was because we implemented very, very sound practices that you teach on a daily basis. You don't have to be at a big firm to compete effectively. You just need to do the right things.
I agree. And so those practices are outlined in the book. They absolutely are. But the book also reinforces to me what the book reinforces, besides the lessons and the career, is how much sacrifice, true sacrifice, we didn't talk about that at all, true sacrifice Bob and Paul made during the Massey Knakal years. Bob continues to make during his years now at BKREA. Look, it's maybe a simple business, commercial real estate, but it's hard. It is hard to do day in, day out. So for me, when I look at the book, and I've read it probably 35 times, I think was the last time I counted now, every time I come with a different story in my mind what the book's about, So the book is about the sacrifice and commitment. It's the shoe dog of commercial real estate. It is. I believe this book is the shoe dog of what Phil Knight did for his story. I think Bob's doing now with his story on how to be successful in anything. It's a business book. It's a beautiful book. I love it.
Yeah, you talk about the sacrifice. You're making me think, Rod, that for 3 or 4 years during the S&L crisis, we ran Massey Knakal on credit cards. I ran my personal life on credit cards for 10 years, from 1988 to 1998. My net worth, I had gotten so addicted to credit cards. I had $180,000 of credit card lines, and my net worth fluctuated between 0 and minus 180 for 10 years. But I just really loved the business. I loved doing it. I believed what we were doing made sense. I saw the progress we were making, and I believed that someday we'd do okay. You have to, if you really believe in yourself and you are doing the right things, you have to keep pounding the rock. You have to keep pounding the rock, and you will get there. You'll get to the successful place if you just stay diligent and you keep doing things in the right way.
That someday finally came a few years later, but thankfully you stuck in there. Bob, you were mentioning and just the importance of a coach and the role that Rod has played, in your career. I feel like you're not going pro if you don't have a coach. You're not as serious, as you think you are if you don't have a coach and
Whitney,
other people that are ahead of you.
That's exactly what happened when Rod was interviewing me for his first book, Brokers Who Dominate. And I got around to asking him what he did. And he said, "Oh, I'm a broker coach." And I said, "Broker coach? What the heck is a broker coach? I didn't even know that existed." And then it occurred to me, at the time, Tiger Woods was winning championships every week, and Michael Jordan was winning championships all the time. And I said to myself, you know what? Tiger has a coach. Michael has a coach. Olympic athletes have coaches. I'm going to give this a try. And it totally changed my life.
That's incredible. Well, now that I want to get to a few final questions here for you guys, and some of this even on a personal level, but because I know this also pushes into your success on a professional level as well. But what are some of the most important metrics that you track personally? And it could be your morning routine or exercising or whatever. What are those things that, Whitney, I'm going to do this every day because I know this just helps me to have a successful day?
Yeah, well, certainly, we've tracked so many metrics over the years. We've fluctuated. At the beginning, when I first started working with Rod, we were tracking 15 or 20 metrics a week. We got to a point where we were tracking over 100 things every week, including how many green juices I was drinking. And
Hold on. That was before I coached you.
yeah, like a bunch of stuff. But, now it's just a few metrics professionally. But personally, waking up early is a very important one, but waking up early is not the goal. The goal is going to sleep early, because if you don't go to sleep early, you can't wake up early. At least I can't. So, getting to sleep early, getting into the gym, getting your workout in, trying to eat right and, do all those kind of things are important. But I think to have a clear mind, you have to be healthy and you need your rest. And I think, I used to be able to, up until COVID, I used to be able to easily survive on 5 or 6 hours sleep a night, and did that for many, many years. But then during COVID, started sleeping 7 or 8 hours a night. I need my sleep now. I think everybody says sleep is very important. So getting to sleep early is probably my number one objective. And then wake up early, get a great workout in, and start the day well. That puts you in a position for success.
If I can add to that, we track with BK specifically. It's just different for every client, but BK, we're not about how many calls he makes. Doesn't matter. It's how many conversations he has. That's the key thing. How many decision makers can we talk to every week? We have to have a certain number every week to make sure that we keep the pipeline fluid and robust, right? How many people can we get to the map room every week? Because the map room just reinforces the authority that BK has, right? So from my perspective, though, yeah, get sleep, work out every day. And then my entire team has KPIs. I think this is really important for anyone. My entire team, my senior management team, and even our clients have KPIs they must report to me and or their coaches every single week. And without those KPIs, you're just winging your practice. If you're not tracking your numbers, you're winging it and thinking it's going to work out. Numbers don't lie. I mean, they don't. And Bob has a knack for numbers. He does. You have to figure out what your KPIs are that's driving you to where you want to go and look at them every single week to ensure you're on the right path.
If you could both pick one thing that's contributed to your success, what would it be?
I would have to say that God has blessed me with a tremendous amount of energy. And I think that's the number one thing that has led to my success is I can easily put in a 14-hour day, feel great at the end of the day, and ready to get up the next morning and do it all over again.
It's not just the coffee?
No, I don't.
Or the
I
green
only
juice?
started drinking coffee a year ago, believe it or not. My wife is a huge coffee drinker. We've been together almost 20 years now, and she has coffee every morning. I only started drinking coffee about a year ago, so it's a natural energy.
And I would say I've been blessed like Bob. I mean, one of my coaches just got me looking at a toy Energizer bunny because that's who I am. I'm high energy, but I, like Bob, have total complete conviction that I'm the best at what I do, and there's no doubt in my mind, and no one can prove me wrong. And if they try, so what? And Bob believes it as well. Because if you have that belief, if you have that conviction that you are as good as you think you are, guess what? People believe it and you believe it and great things happen. So that's my secret sauce.
It changes the way you walk in the room. Guys, I'm incredible. Just an incredible interview. Very grateful for both of you and your time. Tell the listeners how they can get in touch with each of you, but obviously also where they can find the book.
Well, you can always find me on social media. Feel free to DM me or email me directly at bk@bkrea.com or call me on my cell phone, 917-509-9501. If you have a building to sell in New York or know somebody that wants to sell a building in New York or just want to chat about real estate, give me a call.
How cool is that the guy gives out his personal cell phone to all the listeners? And that's the beautiful thing. He wants to talk about real estate. So, and for us, it's Massimo, Massimo-group.com. But the best way to reach both of us is to buy a copy of Selling Buildings. Folks, it's available for pre-order right now. Depending on when this thing launches, it's launching officially on May 20th. And the great news is, Whitney, we're having a 4-hour workshop, Bob and I, and a special guest, Brian Sohant, on the 20th in New York City. Come to this workshop, or certainly join us at our launch party on May 20th in New York City. It's going to be incredible. The icons of commercial real estate brokers are going to be there, and investors. We cannot wait.
Awesome. That's a wrap. That's the end of the show, guys. Thank you so much.